everything that made this occasion such a splendid sight as it is today. However, I'd also like to thank Sue Knox because for giving the grace. This was particularly appropriate because for years Sue, Ros and I, with her late husband, used to have a celebration because it was her husband's birthday and our anniversary. So we generally met year in and year out. So thank you, Sue. But however, I now come to the star of the day, Ros. Ros has laboured in all senses of the word for the family. Finding herself in 1968 with 4 children under 4.5, she didn't pause. She was determined to breastfeed the twins at the same time. Midwives came from miles around to view the scene. The trouble was, they all lost weight. Subsequently, the twins were fed on industrial quantities of carnation milk. Thank you. Ros never rests. When the twins first went to school, Ros said she thought she would like a year off. It was hard to disagree. The next day, when I came home from work, Ros had found her next job. And this has been the pattern of her life. Even today, she works tirelessly for Sunnyside Church, for Gorhambury House, and for even more elderly neighbours than she is. Yet, Ros manages all this while keeping me happy. A massive, and I'm ashamed to say, a thankless undertaking. She even laughs at my jokes. I now like to thank her belatedly for everything she's done for over 50 years for both the family and for me. Ros.
Right. My turn. I must be quite spontaneous. So, one or two things, and obviously I have to answer that one. But before I do, I just want to say one or two other things. This was presented to me just before the party by, unfortunately, Colette, who isn't here. She's shot off. But I thought it was a good way of... Lovely. Lovely. Rather fun. But also, that's the only one I've opened. We've been given quantities of cards which fill my capacious handbag. Haven't had a chance to open them because they kept coming in. So there's nothing to be done about that. So let that represent all the other lovely cards which I thank you now in general and will thank you properly in due course. We have been absolutely amazing. And also, like John, thank you all for coming, and also, again, thank our children so much, Jane and David, and everybody else, who have conspired to really give us not nearly as much as we feel ought to be doing, to do. Thank you all, and Jane and David especially. Right. Now, Many of you who are here who are at our wedding, and if you're developing an interest in family history, may have been looking at the photos. I want to say a little bit about people who are on the photos, but who are no longer around to be here. Looking at them, starting with the first generation back, John's grandmother was here. I haven't worked out how old she'd be now, but our parents, had they been here, and you could hardly expect it of them, would have been between 106 and 110. And my goodness, how they would have loved to see everything that's going on out there, these tables here. I mean, more than half the people in this room must be directly descended from your parents or mine. But there are some much sadder gaps in that, and those are people who we would have liked to be here of our own generation. You've looked at the photos. We have 4 gorgeous, handsome ushers. And we have Nigel here, which is wonderful. John's mentioned you. John Morley, also a great college friend. In fact, the man who introduced us sadly is not here. But Jacqueline, thank you Jacqueline, Jacqueline is. And then the other 2, I can say it now, I couldn't say it when I was younger. My 2 older brothers, also gorgeous actors. I'd never have told them that. And we've got, I think we've got a very large majority of their grandchildren here. And I think I'm right in saying that we have all their children here. That's a fabulous turnout. Thank you very much for coming. How much we wish they were here too. The bridesmaids have done a whole lot better, as John has said. We have 3 bridesmaids here. Mary, my childhood friend, and the gorgeous girls looking through the cake. But the big gap, of course, is my younger sister, Caroline. And Malcolm, thank you for coming. And so there are other people, all of us are remembering. Just want to mention a few names. John's already mentioned Mary. Then there are Denny, Brenda and Peter, David, Nigel, and our sister-in-law Anne, married to Peter, whose children and grandchildren are here and wish with us so much that she and the other people I've mentioned were here too. The absentee list goes on. There are a lot of people who have awful excuses, like being on holiday, or possibly living in Australia, or Boston, USA, and I don't forgive them one bit for being here. But there are also 3 people particularly who are prevented from coming through illness: Peter and Tessa Thomas, and John Strickland. So, you know, we're missing them as well. Right, now, we also, you'll find, have got hardly anybody who are local. If we had had the number of people who we've collected here in and around Berkhamsted over 40 years, I think that even Jane and David's garden would have been a bit too small. Right, but of course, I'm here to talk about John. Oh, well, a bit later on, Jane is going to say a bit more about another special interest of hers. John's minded me to say that. Right, John. I'm going to talk about him in 3 capacities. First of all, as husband. First of all, before we were married, his mother assured me that she had brought him up very well and that he was very good around the house. Well, she was, as always, quite right. He was the modern husband before they'd been invented, and he still is. Every time you get one of these questionnaires in the newspaper, you know, does your husband do the washing up, does the husband do this, that and the other, he can tick all the boxes, and I very kindly allow him to do that. Now, as a father, going to the press again, a recent glossy supplement suggested that from the start, the influence of a father is of quite a different nature to that of a mother. Equally caring, but a lot more exciting, possibly risky, and certainly, I would add, effective. When Jane was born, we lived at the top of a hill. Mr. Commuter John would run up that hill to catch his infant daughter before she was put to bed. He would carry her up and down the room, talking to her about life. Now life, he would say to this infant, is this, that, and the other. Well, the lesson has lasted well. She is still very knowledgeable about life. He inspired enthusiasms. We built a Mirodini, and Tom particularly became an eager crew. He survived. What's more, he still enjoys sailing. He and his family are keen sailors. On one of our many happy summer holidays in France, when as usual we were very low on francs, John shared, we bought for ourselves 3 packets of fruit to keep us going, goodness knows how many days. John shared his packet with Joe. They tossed for every single chip. Needless to say, Joe was well fed at the end of it. Joe still loves France, to the extent that he's now acquired a French family and a bilingual son. As for Emma, when she was hunting a day or two's work experience between university and the real world, John found her a photocopying niche at his consultancy firm. She now runs her own successful market research business, so he's been a big influence on them. He could extract the maximum of fun out of pretty tedious positions. On those camping holidays in France, the worst bit was pitching and packing up. Most children would go and hide or moan bitterly on such occasions, and if I'd asked them to do so, so would I. Right, said their father. Human chain, and these children would giggle and get into rows, and each item would get passed from hand to hand to hand to hand and onto the site. And it was done in no time. We broke records and had cross looks from other parents and sloppy children. It worked a treat. On one occasion, my teaching job took me off on the school field week. John had to wake and feed the children, dispatch them to a kindly neighbour who was getting them to school, and he still had to catch the 7:42. I was only too familiar with the pitfalls of the early morning routine, and I thought he'd never manage it. However, vague memories of his national service days came back. He was a sort of mixture between Von Trapp and Mary Poppins. And he instituted a daily room inspection. Stand by your beds, he would roar. 4 children, neatly dressed and fed, stood by their beautifully made beds. Again, they would be giggling with the fun of it all. No doubt they had shiny shoes as well. When I returned, I was regaled with their having done all this and sitting down to listen to classical music for a good 5 or 10 minutes before it was time to leave the house. I don't know how it's done. I never did find out how it's done. He's not lost his touch with the grandchildren either. Just give you one example. When Hugo was quite little and needed a haircut, an expedition to the barber's with Grandad was proposed. Hugo did not want to go. To his mother's horror, Grandad suggested to him a number 1, which I was assured at the time was a haircut that leaves you without hair at all. Hugo was intrigued and went willingly, his mother frantically mouthing, "4" behind his back. And of course it was a perfect haircut, willingly endured. Well, I get serious now. Looking back on, but not for long, looking back on 50 years of marriage is like looking at a fabulous view from the top of a mountain. The high points can be clearly seen, while the rocky bits, if there were any, are hard to remember. The journey so far, for me as well as for the children, has usually been overwhelmingly fun. And the thing about laughing at his jokes is it's so easy because you see them coming and they're always new. And we're very comfortable with them. Thank you, John, for all that fun, huge support and love. Please raise your glasses.
My turn now. I was the best man at this wedding. I really didn't know what I was starting. Just must put my specs on. Didn't need them then. Yeah, I was the best man. I was actually a better man, really. Well, when I say better, I mean perhaps more suitable or more appropriate. Which, of course, was John's twin, sitting here. But he was away having a ball on the other side of the world in Fiji, and of course Fiji was a much further away in those days than it is today. I gather that there are a number of people, quite a large number, who were also at the wedding, and I've got to admit that now and again I struggle to recognise those people. I look in the mirror every morning, and I don't look any different. But I can't say the same for you lot. Apart, of course, from the bridesmaids, Ruth and Joanna and Mary. And Charlie. Where's Charlie? Okay. Yes, the bridesmaids, of course, I still completely recognise. I, as a best man, was supposed to be able to indulge myself a little bit in bridesmaids, but I never did on that occasion. So watch out, girls. Being a diligent sort of a character, I thought I would look at what else was going on round about that time. It was the 5th of August was the actual date of the marriage. On the 4th of August 1961, there was a birthday. It was Barack Obama's birthday. So, happy birthday, Barack.
And Helen. And Helga's.
Helga's as well? Gosh. Wow. You must have been born much after that. So happy birthday, Barack, although mind you, on the 4th of August, he was probably not all that happy.
this year, because he did have a few other problems on his plane. On the 6th of August, it will be of interest to you to know that Sturdy Moss won the German Grand Prix. On the 10th, the UK applies to join the EEC, European Economic Community, as I still prefer to think of it. And on the 13th of August, the Berlin Wall started construction. On the 5th, C notes it says. Oh, C notes, right, okay. There were some really astounding events on the 5th. A start was made on building the Rabindra Theatre in Calcutta. Hans Seidel, former president of Bavaria, it says here, kicked the bucket for you youngsters, means that he died. So they were really scratching around on my source to find significant events, and it is quite astonishing that it did not include John Partridge married Rosalind Bishop in Warwick. It is quite astonishing. But there we go. Particularly when you consider what an important event that was. Because the world is a much better place as a result of Jane and Tom and Joe and Emma. Without whom, of course, there would be no Harriet, Hugo, Dora, Jamie, Nicholas, Colette, Humphrey, Leo, Myrtle, and of course, Felix. Wow. Plus, of course, we wouldn't know David, or Claire, or Jeremy, or Christine. And I guess that those four had something to do with the preceding list, in one way or another. So that sort of little acorn of an event has produced quite a substantial oak, really. And it has also led to us all being gathered here today for this splendid party. So, if all your glasses are fully charged, I would suggest that we drink a toast to John and Roz. John and Roz, the golden couple!